guys, welcome to Children's Church. We have spent the last few months, the last few times you've watched, trying to find out the answer to the question, what does God say that I am? And so we've talked about a lot of different lessons that kind of respond to this question. Today, we're going to discover that we are God's children. And we're going to look at what that means and how we act and what that looks like to us and what that looks like to God. Okay, so we're talking about being God's children. So let's think for a minute, what are some things that we know about being a kid? Like, what are things that kids do, right? So kids go to school, or kids help each other out. Kids have to learn a lot of things, right? Because you're still growing up and learning new lessons and how to do things on your own that maybe a grown-up has helped you with before. Okay, what are some things that you like about being a kid? I remember one thing, and this is like a grown-up thing looking back, one thing that I liked about being a kid was I never had to worry about my own laundry, right? Or I really liked when my mom would make my favorite dinner when it was dinner time. Now I have to pick the dinner for dinner time. It's not as much fun. I really liked going to parties, like a birthday party or something like that. What were some things that you really like about being a kid? What are the best parts? You can tell the person that's watching with you, right? Good things about being a kid. Okay, so being a kid is a lot of fun, and being God's kid, God's children, is a lot of fun too. Okay, the Bible tells us that being God's child means a lot about how we live and how we act. Okay, and that's pretty cool. We have directions for what this means for us. Okay, the Bible is full of true stories of God's children living for Him. So let's take a look at some of this today. Okay, getting to the right spot in my notes. Thank you. You're the best. Okay, so we're going to talk about light today for a little bit. So I'm going to ask my helper in just a sec to turn off the lights in this room, and we're going to pretend that this is God's light, okay? So we're going to turn off the lights, and we're going to imagine that this is God's light shining down on the world, okay? So you can kind of see, and you're going to get your own flashlight or a light to make that, okay, in a minute. But the problem with this is that God's light can't shine straight down on the world like this because the world is a dark place. The world's kind of crooked. So we have this block kind of in the way. So when God's light tries to shine down, look, I'm going to shine at you. See? Okay. It's kind of hard to see. You can't really see that light coming through. Okay. So we're going to learn what we can do as children of God to help God's light shine through. Okay. So we're going to turn our lights back on, and I'm going to show you kind of how this works. Okay. We are God's children, so we are called to be these bright lights in the dark world. This is something that a guy named Paul wrote about in a letter. This is what Paul said. He said this in Philippians 2, verse 15. He said, "Live clean and innocent lives as children of God, shining like bright lights in a world full of crooked people." So we need to figure out, what does God want us to do to shine as these bright lights, okay? How am I like a flashlight? How can I be that bright light for God? Okay, so I'm going to tell you what things you need, and I want you to do this with me. Okay, so after I tell you, I want you to go and grab these things. I want you to get some kind of light. Now, I have this nice little flashlight for like when I go for a walk now at night. It's already dark really soon, so I have this flashlight. A flashlight is awesome if you have one. If not, maybe a grown-up would let you use like their cell phone flashlight or something like that, but you need a light. And you're going to need a dark piece of paper. I dug through. I had some that was blue and some that was black. We're going to use the black one for the lesson, but you need a dark piece of paper, and you need a poker. So I picked pencil to poke because we have a whole lot of pencils. If you don't have a pencil, you could use a pen to poke. We just need something sharp, and we're going to poke our paper. Okay? I even picked one that doesn't have a tip so that I can't accidentally write on things. Okay? So I'm going to read to you some directions about how we can be bright lights, how we can be children of God. And I'm going to pause every verse or so, and I'm going to ask you, what does this tell us about being a child of God? What is the action that we should do here? And when we figure out the action, we're going to poke a hole in the paper. This is going to be cool. Okay, so I'm going to be reading from Philippians 2 again. And we're going to go all the way from 12 to 18, but we're going to take it just a few at a time. Okay? Starts out, my dear friends, you have always obeyed. You obeyed God when I was with you. It is even more important that you obey now while I'm not with you. Okay. As children of God, we are supposed to do what based on this? You have always obeyed. Okay, we have to obey. I'm going to take my peeper, I'm going to poke a hole. And it doesn't really matter how big your hole is. And if it tears a little, it's fine too. Okay, I'm going to poke a hole. I've always obeyed. You obeyed God when I was with you, and it's even more important that you obey now when I'm not with you. So I'm going to poke too. I obey when he's with me. I obey when he's not with me. This sounds a lot like parents to me. Like when my parent is with me and says I have to do something, I have to do it because they're right there watching. But even when they're not there, like what if I'm at a friend's house? What if it's just me and my sister and my brother? I still have to obey, even when they're not with me. Okay, next part. Keep on working to complete your salvation and do it with fear and trembling. Yes, God is working in you to help you want to do what pleases him. Then he gives you the power to do it. Keep on working to complete your salvation. As children of God, we have to keep working. Okay? We can't just say, no, it's good. I'm a child of God. I can stop now. We have to keep working for God. Okay, I'm going to poke another hole. You poke a hole? Okay, so we obey, and we're going to keep working. Okay, getting some holes. You listen this time. Try to figure out what is God telling us in this next part. Do everything without complaining or arguing. Then you will be innocent and without anything wrong in you. You will be God's children without fault. But you are living with crooked and mean people all around you. That is a tough one. I think this needs 2 pokes. Do everything without complaining or arguing, because those are 2 different things, right? If I don't like doing a chore, I might complain about it. Go, oh, what do you mean we have to do the laundry again? I just took the trash out 2 days ago. I can't complain. I'm going to poke a hole for that one, right? I can't complain. And then what was the other one? Without arguing. Do you have somebody at home that you argue with sometimes? You don't have to answer out loud, right? I always wanted to argue with my sister. Little sisters are good to argue with. God says to be a child of God, no arguing. All right, I'm going to poke another hole. Ooh, it's getting kind of holy in there. Okay, next part. Among them, you shine like stars in a dark world. You offer to them the teaching that gives life. So when Christ comes again, I can be happy because my work was not wasted. I ran the race and won. Among them, you shine like stars. To be a child of God, we have to shine. Now that's tricky because I don't look very shiny. So what do you think God means if I'm supposed to shine? What makes somebody bright or shiny like a star? Okay, well, stars give light. And so a light person, well, they don't complain and they don't argue. So maybe they could be cheerful, right? Maybe I could shine by smiling or sharing some kindness or some happiness. That is a shining kind of activity. So, okay, I have to shine like a star. I'm going to poke a hole for that. Good, good. Okay, last part. Your faith makes you offer your lives as a sacrifice in serving God. Perhaps I will have to offer my own blood with your sacrifice, but if that happens, I will be happy and full of joy with all of you. You should also be happy and full of joy with me. Well, that's a great part. You should be happy and full of joy. I'm going to poke 2 holes for that because I should be happy. There's a hole. And I should be full of joy. Okay. Now I'm getting some more in here. Let's do it one time through the whole way, and you can make sure we've got all of the things we should do. My dear friends, you have always obeyed. You obeyed God when I was with you. It's even more important that you obey now while I am not with you. Keep on working to complete your salvation and do it with fear and trembling. Yes, God is working in you to help you do what pleases him. Then he gives you the power to do it. Do everything without complaining or arguing. Then you will be innocent and without anything wrong in you. You will be God's children without fault. But you are living with crooked and mean people all around you. Among them, you shine like stars in a dark world. You offer to them the teaching that gives life. Oh, I didn't say we offer them teaching. I should poke another hole. Offer them teaching. Poke. Okay. Offer to them the teaching that gives life. So when Christ comes again, I can be happy because my work was not wasted. I ran in the race and won. Your faith makes you offer your lives as a sacrifice in serving God. I didn't poke for offer your lives. Poke again. Offer your lives as a sacrifice in serving God. Perhaps I will have to offer my own blood with your sacrifice, but if that happens, I will be happy and full of joy with all of you. You should be happy and full of joy with me. Okay, now my paper looks a bit different, right? And I've been poking mine kind of in a small circle. Okay, but that's okay. Wherever you've poked, that works out. Hang on to that paper. Okay, so based on this, what does it look like to be a child of God? We have to obey. We have to keep working. We have to be bright and happy and full of joy and offer ourselves to God, right? All of these things. But he promises that he'll be with us. This is a lot to do. But he says, I will be with you. Okay, so this is not something that we're doing alone. And that's one reason that God calls us his children, because children aren't acting all alone. They have that parent, they have somebody with them, just like Jesus will continue to be with us. Okay, so think about other things we know. What are some other things that we know that we should do in order to be a child of God? What else helps us here? Because this verse doesn't have everything in the whole Bible. What are some other things that we should do as God's child? Well, we could put that we should maybe help others. That's a great idea. That's one thing that we try to do, right? And we can pray to keep growing closer to God, so we can poke a hole for that. That's a good thing. And it's good for us, when we keep doing that work, it's good for us to do things like to talk to people about God. Well, there, now I've got a bigger hole. Talk to people about God and to continue to be kind, right? And to be faithful. And so our faithful might be in our actions or in our thoughts. So if you can think of other things, poke a few more holes for those, right? We have some other things that we know are good things to do as children of God. So, but now, this is our dark world, right? Do you think I can ask my lighting person to turn off our lights one more time? Let's try this one more time. So take your flashlight, okay? We're gonna turn it on. And so we have our dark world, but now, look what comes through. Can you see my light now? It's shining through. So the more we work as children of God, the more we do those things, the more our light is shining through. And just imagine if we were all poking holes all through this paper all the time, think of how much more that light could come through, right? Thank you. So we can keep that in mind. If we want to keep being the light, we have to let that light through into the world. Pretty big deal. We are God's children, and that means something very specific about who we are, okay? So think about, this is like being part of a family. So think about your family for a minute. What are some things that are special about your family? Maybe things that you like to do, or things about you. Like if people were describing your family, what would you say? Okay. So things about you might be, my family all looks kind of similar. Like we're tall or we have dark hair, but they might also say things like, they like to ride bikes, right? Or we like to play games. We like to read books, right? There are some things that are special about our family. We like to tell bad jokes, right? Those dad jokes that you go, oh man, that was kind of a groaner. We like those. Okay, there are specific things about being children of God as well, things that make us part of God's family. Okay? Each family has certain things that they laugh about or that bond that holds them together as a family. And when we're God's children, we live in a certain way as members of God's family to help shine that light in the world. Okay? Even though the world around us doesn't live in God's way, right? There's that darkness. There are the crooked people who aren't living in that certain way. Okay? We do. And we can be just like our holy papers to help shine his light through the darkness. Okay? We want to be that light that's shining through. And we've discovered a bunch of ways that God's children are different. So let's remember just some of those. Paul said rather, that God's children do everything without complaining or arguing. So let's think about for just a second, when was the last time you complained or argued about something? This is tricky, so you don't have to say it out loud. I'll think of mine. I probably did complain about the laundry, okay? You've got to wash it, and you have to fold it, and you have to put it away, and it's so much of it. People keep wearing clothes all the time. So if I'm thinking about it, I go, yeah, but as part of God's family, I don't complain or argue about things, right? Because I want to be like the holy paper. I want to help shine the light. So I'm not going to be complaining or arguing because I know that it takes work, okay? So what could I do differently? Well, I could be thankful that I have all those clothes to wash, right? My family has lots of things to wear, and I have a washing machine that works, so that helps me out, and I have the time to do it. So I can focus on the good things there instead of complaining about the chore that I have to do. Paul also said that God's children faithfully serve God. So what is something that you have done to serve God? And you're thinking, Miss Ann, well, I'm not old enough to maybe help at church, or I don't teach a children's lesson, I don't help with the children's choir. But remember, whenever we serve a member of God's family, we're serving God. So what is something that you've done to help someone, right? Have you helped to clean up at home? Have you been kind or helpful to a friend? Maybe you helped your teacher out with something, or you sent a thank you card or a nice email. All of those things are also serving God. So we can think of some of those things and maybe a thing that we can plan to do this week or in the future so we can keep acting like children of God. I love this one. Paul wrote that God's children share joy. Okay? Tell me about something that you've done that has made someone else laugh or smile. Okay. Tell the person that you're with something that you have done that has made someone laugh or smile. Okay? I saw some family recently, and so we gave a lot of hugs. Now we're all in the same family because I know that maybe this isn't a time that we can be giving a lot of people hugs, but we could give smiles. I have heard definitely that you can tell if someone's smiling even if they're wearing a mask, right? Because their face looks happy. And what are some other things? You could say hello. You could send a nice note, or you could send a wave because you can see those things. We want to share joy to make everybody happier. We shine God's light just by talking about how we live as God's children. And we can show these things by how we live. Okay? You are all God's children. When you believe in Jesus, you join the family of God. That's all that you have to do. And Jesus welcomes you into his family. And he promises to stay with you when you're doing all of these things. Okay? It's pretty amazing. Okay? And he is there shining the light the whole time. Even if you're having trouble poking the holes. Even if maybe you haven't poked some holes for a while because things have been tough. He keeps shining the light. And as soon as you do one of those things, as soon as you're able to poke one of those holes through, more light comes in. And that's the amazing part, right? All right. Let's take a moment and thank God for making us all his children, because it's a pretty amazing family to be a part of, right? So get comfortable. Okay. Let's say a prayer together. Dear God, thank you so much for making us a part of your family. We're so excited that you're here and that we get to be your children. But thank you also for staying with us while we do all this work, because I know that sometimes it's not easy to do all the right things, even when you've sent us all of this teaching. So thank you for staying with us. Please keep leading us and showing us how we can poke those holes so that you can shine more and more of your light into our world. Thank you, Lord. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you go out this week and you think of lots of ways that you can poke holes and be a part of this family as children of God. We'll see you next week. Thanks.